Story 1. The Road to Madness.
On a night when the full moon lit up the sky, above the abandoned Sanitarium Hollow psychiatric hospital, 4 young guys decided to undertake a crazy venture. Their goal was to stream, walk the ominous hallways, and film the paranormal events that local legends claimed were taking place inside the walls of this abandoned institution. Many of the town's residents feared this hospital, claiming it was haunted by the spirits of deceased patients. The boys, Jake, Emily, Michael, and Lisa, came here for a different purpose. For Jake, it was a chance to become a famous blogger. And for Emily, it was to investigate the paranormal. Michael and Lisa, a couple of lovers, just decided to support their friends. They had their gear ready, flashlights, cameras, and ammunition for self-defense. They climbed up through an old, rotted wooden staircase and entered the hospital through a broken window. The first minutes inside were quiet but tense. The cherished words spoken before the stream began echoed in the background. We are a team. We're not afraid of anything. It's just an old hospital. The light of lanterns illuminated the sparsely gloomy corridors and abandoned wards like pictures of a nightmare. The young men joked and whispered comments to their online followers, but with each step, the fear drew closer. As they surveyed the first floor, nothing out of the ordinary happened, but when they decided to go up to the second floor, the real atmosphere of fear began. Emily suddenly felt a breath on her neck, and there was a pop in the room behind Jake's back. They turned around but saw no one. The events were getting stranger by the minute. The lanterns flickered on and off by themselves as if someone were trying to stop them. Footsteps sounded first in the distance and then came closer and closer, but there was no visible sign of any living creatures. As Michael and Lisa stood in one of the rooms, the door suddenly slammed shut in front of them and screams came from inside. They started banging on the door, trying to help their friends, but it opened as suddenly as it had slammed shut and there was no one in front of them. A ghostly glow shimmered outside the window, and Jake saw the figure of a woman in a long dress standing on the outside balcony. It was the moment when he first experienced real fear. He screamed and ran toward the balcony, but when he stepped onto it, the woman was gone. Their stream continued, and viewers' comments were full of questions and demands to keep exploring. But the youth were no longer in the mood to continue. They returned to the auditorium where their night of horror had begun and decided to leave. But the hospital was no longer as it had been at the beginning. Now it had come to life, and the spirits of the dead patients had gathered around. The corridors were filled with ghostly figures, and strange sounds began from all directions. They rushed for the exit, but every door they tried to open was locked. Suddenly, Emily began to shake and squirm in pain. She screamed that someone was holding her down. The others rushed to her, trying to help her, but her body began to rise in the air, as if an invisible force had lifted her above the floor. Her screams quickly faded away, and she disappeared in the thin air, leaving behind only the faint smell of sulfur. The remaining 3 ran panically, trying to find a way out of this nightmarish trap. But the hospital was changing its structure, and the corridors were full of mazes that seemed impossible to find a way out of this nightmare trap. Michael and Lisa disappeared into the darkness, and only Jake remained, fumbling through the gloomy corridors, chased by the invisible servants of the hospital. His screams grew fainter and fainter, and eventually he collapsed to the floor and fell silent. The story of these young boys' deaths remains a mystery. Locals say that the hospital is hungry for souls and continues to curse anyone who dares to enter its gloomy walls. Sanitarium Hollow now has a life of its own, and every wall of it is permeated with fear and hopelessness. Don't you dare go where the souls of dead patients remain forever.
Story 2. Stream of Fear.
Jason stood on the doorstep of an abandoned mental hospital, his camera in his hands carefully prepared for streaming. It was night outside, and the place looked even more gloomy in the light of the pale moon. He slowly walked inside. The atmosphere was so tense that it seemed as if the air itself was overwhelming him. Initially, his videos were successful, and he happily talked about the paranormal happenings taking place in this gloomy place. Subscribers eagerly awaited each new stream, and Jason enjoyed his growing popularity. He explored locked wards, recorded strange sounds and unexplained phenomena, but none of it seemed like real horror. However, the more he filmed streamings in the hospital, the weirder things began to happen in his life. After each trip to the hospital, he would notice strange noises and sounds in his house. Often when he woke up at night, he thought someone was knocking on his window, but there was no trace of it. Ghostly shadows and mystical figures began to appear in his videos, which he detailed on his blog. In the beginning, His subscribers thought it was part of his well-crafted content, but as the strange happenings began to spread off screen, they became increasingly concerned. One day, Jason told his subscribers about how he felt some sort of ominous presence around him. He described it as an impenetrable darkness that began to follow him no matter where he was. He claimed that it became his constant companion and no prayers or rituals could ward it off. All of his videos became saturated with fear and anxiety, and the comments were filled with warnings from his subscribers, advising him to stop filming in the hospital. However, Jason was persistent and persisted with his research. He believed that the more he learned about the paranormal, the more the world would know. But his obsession to explore the place led to even more frightening consequences. The paranormal phenomena became a reality when Jason began to notice strange changes in his physical condition. He began to lose his hair, his skin became covered in rashes, and he felt weak and exhausted. His blog subscribers were concerned and advised him to see a doctor, but he refused. His conviction that he had a duty to solve the mysteries of this hospital was stronger than any common sense advice. Eventually, Jason went to the hospital. His condition was critical, and the doctors could not understand what had happened. His body continued to be affected by an unknown force, and he was doomed to a slow and agonizing death. In one of the last posts he sent to his blog from the hospital, Jason admitted that he was cursed. He said that he had gone too far in his research and had summoned some sort of dark entity from the hospital. Now it is haunting him and slowly destroying him. Jason's last stream was full of his anguish and pleas for forgiveness. His last words were filled with terror, and he died without solving the mystery he had caused himself. His blog was deleted and his name became forgotten.